History's greatest minds all solved impossible problems. None of them could solve their own lives. Here's what may be happening when a brain runs this hot, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. 5 of the smartest humans who ever lived. In every one of them, the very brain that made them brilliant seems to be what broke them. William James Sidis had an IQ often estimated above 250. Never a standardized score, just how far ahead of every test he seemed to be. By 18 months, he was reading the New York Times. By 11, he sat in Harvard lecture halls, the youngest student in the university's history. Then something broke. He vanished into a rented room in Boston. No degree that mattered, no career, just a clerk's job cataloging streetcar transfer tickets, changing his name every time a reporter tracked him down. Why would the most gifted mind alive choose invisibility over the world stage everyone was ready to hand him? Because his brain was never wired to reward genius. It was wired to reward belonging. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger scanned human brains during social rejection and found that rejection activates regions that overlap with physical pain, suggesting the brain's threat system may not fully distinguish being excluded from being hurt. The press mocked Sidis relentlessly. His own parents paraded his intellect like a circus act, then punished him when the crowds turned cruel. He was never fully accepted by the people around him, and a brain that reads exclusion as a death sentence may only have one move left: shut down, go quiet, disappear. His genius may not have protected him from the people around him. It may be part of the reason they never let him in. Isaac Newton rewired physics before he turned 25, alone during a plague quarantine with nothing but a prism and a notebook. Gravity, motion, calculus. Then the paranoia arrived. He locked his door, bolted it twice, and peered through the keyhole at his own front step, convinced colleagues were stealing his ideas. He melted Mercury over open flames for decades, chasing alchemy in secret. He wrote to his closest friends, accusing them of plotting against him, then cut them off completely. What happens to a mind built to find patterns everywhere, once it finally runs out of real ones to find? Historians still argue over why: mercury poisoning, an underlying psychiatric condition, or both at once, feeding each other for years. Nobody can prove it was the genius itself that did it. But picture it anyway. The same mind that mapped planetary orbits, now scanning for patterns in people instead. Every letter becomes a code to crack. Every silence, a conspiracy. Every friend, a suspect standing just a little too close. The man who calculated the exact path of comets couldn't calculate that his own colleagues weren't plotting against him. Not because brilliance causes paranoia, because in Newton's case, both arrived in the same skull at the same time and fed each other. Nikola Tesla saw the future before it existed, sketching it in his head down to the exact bolt pattern. Wireless power, remote control, alternating current, the electricity behind every wall socket on Earth right now. In 1897, George Westinghouse came to him broke, begging release from a royalty deal about to make Tesla the world's first billionaire. Tesla tore up the contract on the spot, walked away from what would have become hundreds of millions, and saved his friend's company. He never once tried to get it back. He died broke himself, alone in a small hotel room, feeding pigeons on a New York street corner. One of them, a white female with pale gray wingtips, was different. He said he loved her the way a man loves a woman, and that she understood him the way almost no person ever had. One night, she flew through his window to say goodbye. When she died, he told his biographer, something went out of his life, and he knew right then that his life's work was finished. How does the man who electrified an entire planet end up penniless, alone, mourning a bird? Nobody scanned Tesla's brain, so nobody can say for certain what was happening inside it. One theory: a reward system evolution built to push you toward food, shelter, status, and connection got rerouted onto pure abstraction, onto invention, and finally onto the one creature that never once asked him for any of it. If that's what happened, Tesla's brain may have kept giving everything away and never once circled back to keep anything for himself. Ludwig Boltzmann proved atoms were real, decades before anyone on Earth had the technology to see one. He stood at the blackboard-covered edge to edge in equations, certain he'd cracked something true about the physical universe. The room just shrugged. Nobody could follow the math. Rival physicists mocked him publicly, called his atoms a fantasy dressed in symbols. He swung between manic bursts of brilliant work and crushing depressive collapses for years. Here's the part that changes everything you just heard about the other four. Boltzmann's tribe didn't reject his ideas because they were wrong. They rejected them because they were too far ahead to follow. And to an ancient brain built centuries before peer review ever existed, Those two things register as precisely the same signal. Rejection lights up the same circuitry as physical pain, whether the crowd disagrees with you or simply can't keep pace. Your brain never checks who's right before it hurts you. He hanged himself in a small hotel room by the sea, while his wife and daughter were out for a swim just outside, convinced his life's work would die quietly with him in that room. He was right. Atoms were real, confirmed within a few years of his death. Every phone, every star chart, every modern chemistry class has proven it. Boltzmann wasn't wrong. He was simply alone with being right, years too early. And his ancient brain could not tell the difference between a tribe that disagreed and a tribe that had already left him behind. Marilyn vs. Savant solved the hardest math puzzle in America in her weekly magazine column, in seconds flat, without a calculator, a chalkboard, or a single note. Once listed by Guinness for the highest IQ ever recorded, a category Guinness later retired because no test really holds up at the extreme edges, sitting quietly at a kitchen table in Missouri. Then she answered one puzzle correctly, and the world came for her anyway. She solved the Monty Hall problem in print. Nearly 10,000 readers wrote back to call her wrong, hundreds with PhDs. One professor telling her women look at math differently than men. She was provably correct. It didn't matter. She spent decades answering reader letters instead of running a research institute, mocked on national television by men she outscored by 50 points or more. Why does a hierarchy turn on its own smartest member the instant she proves it? Stanford's Robert Sapolsky spent 30 years tracking wild baboon troops, and his work points to a pattern. Subordinates who challenge the order at the top get hit with more stress and aggression from above, regardless of merit. Sapolsky studied baboons, not EQ columnists, but the same pattern shows up in human hierarchies too. Vos Savant's brain may never have been the actual threat in that room. Her rank might have been. Being right in the wrong room can be its own kind of danger. And some researchers argue human hierarchies are built to make sure of it. 5 completely different breakdowns: social exile, possible mental illness, sacrifice and obsession, depression, public mockery. No single mechanism explains all 5. But underneath every one of them may sit the same ancient hardware. A brain shaped for a group of about 150 people, not for global isolation or standing out this far from everyone else. Your brain wasn't built to hold the universe inside one skull. It was built for something smaller, older. Spot danger, share food, stay close to your people. Genius didn't save any of these 5. It seems to have pushed every one of them further from the group. And isolation is one of the oldest threats that wiring still treats as an emergency. A mind sharp enough to solve almost anything except the one problem it was never built to solve. Intelligence can map the stars, split the atom, rewrite physics. It still can't solve loneliness.